Hello everyone and welcome to the college football version of ProLine. We'll look at the Pac-12 for 2016. I'm John Cranton, joined by Jeff Sadi. He runs Las Vegas Sports Services. We're going to take a look at returning starters of these teams' revenge games, betting angles, and betting trends, all from a Las Vegas perspective. First, if you want to get free plays sent right to your cell phone every day from Jim Feist, it's free. All you have to do is text GAME, G-A-M-E, to 25827. If you want to get top plays from the nation's top handicappers, including Jeff, you can go to jimfeist.com. He's got articles on football previews and videos, plus his fast facts, free stats right from Jim's personal database. And if you want to drop the ProLine staff a note, you can go to ProLine at Facebook at ProLine TV or Twitter at Jim Feist Sports. All right, Jeff, let's get into the Pac-12 for 2016. Start with the North Division. The Pac-12 North last year was taken by Stanford with an 8-1 record. You got Oregon at 7-2, came up just a little bit short, despite the fact that they beat Stanford as a 10-point underdog, 38-36. You had USC at 6-3 that won the South, that struggled at time, and Stanford just rolled over them 41-22 to win the Pac-10 title, or Pac-12 title game. So let's start with that offensive machine up north in green, the Ducks from Oregon, Jeff.
Yeah, the Ducks returned 6 on offense, 5 on defense. Last year they were 5th in the country, 43 points a game, 36 in passing, 5th in rushing. But this year they have breaking a new quarterback. Well, not a new quarterback, but he has some. But quarterback Jeff Locke, he's thrown for 5 TDs, 4 interceptions, 580 yards. He's back after sharing time with Vernon Adams last year. Also, they have a senior quarterback, Dakota Prukop. He transferred from Montana State. So the quarterback situation isn't right now is pretty iffy. 3 offensive line starters are back. Junior running back Royce Freeman, 17 TDs last year, 6.5 yards per carry. And also running back Taj Griffin, 7.4 yards per carry last year. Junior wide receiver Darren Carrington is back, and also wide receiver Dwayne Stanford. And also on defense, they gave out 36.8 points per game last year. So but for Oregon, that's not that unusual. They were 116th in yards allowed and 76 versus the run. So the defense it's going to be in a lot of high-scoring games here again. Even they went over the total 9 out of 13 games last year, even with some high-posted totals. New defensive coordinator Brady Hoke, remember him from Michigan and San Diego State? He's instituting a 4-3 defense in place of the 3-4 scheme. The secondary was the weakest part of the team last year. They gave out 35 passing touchdowns. That was second worst in the FBS. 307 passing yards per game. That was third worst in the FBS. And 56 pass completions of 20 or more yards. That was 8th worst. So they need a big improvement there in the secondary. The schedule, they host Virginia week 2. They're at Nebraska week 3. They have road games at Nebraska, Washington State, Cal, USC, Utah, Oregon State. They're on a 52-32 run over the total, even with posted high totals, as I said. So you always have to look over in this, consider the over in Oregon's games. I'm not sure about the 9-4 last year. I think it's going to be 9-4 this year because with that quarterback situation, I'm not. It's kind of hard for them to win to pick a double-digit wins for that. I'll go 9-4 for Oregon this year, John.
All right, a team that's going to give Oregon a run here is Stanford, as they always do, and the great offense of Oregon, but Stanford has just had a great defense in quite a few number of years, including last year. So I'm going to take a look at them. 12-2 straight up last year, 10-4 against the spread. David Shaw has just done a terrific job here. He's got 5 starters back on offense, 5 on defense, and boy, when this team gets to a bowl game, do they kick some butt. 2 years ago, they beat Maryland 45-21, and then last year played that great Iowa defense in the Rose Bowl, crushed them 45-16, and this offense looks outstanding again. They averaged 37.8 points per game last year. That was 18th in the nation with tremendous balance, just over 211 yards rushing and passing per game. In fact, the running game was 19th in the nation, averaging over 223 yards. They do have a new quarterback, though, for 2016. You got junior Ryan Burns. He's 6'5", junior, and then 6'5" sophomore Keller Christ. He had some action last year, a little bit, 59 yards. So it's really a battle between one of those two, but Shaw has done a great job running this program. They only have 2 offensive line starters back, but they are outstanding players in David Bright at left tackle and senior guard Johnny Caspers, and Shaw is known for building brilliant offensive lines. So this is going to be a great ground attack again because they have Christian McCaffrey back, a junior running back. What an incredible, actually he does everything, but what an amazing talent this guy had. Over 2,000 yards rushing last year, 6 yards per carry. He had 45 pass receptions for 645 yards. He's loaded with speed. He was the AP Player of the Year and certainly deserved it. And he's not alone either. You got senior wide receiver Michael Rector, 559 yards, 16.4 yards per catch. And then they've got a freshman sprinter in Isaiah Brandt Sims, who's going to be on the wide receiver course. So this offense certainly has tremendous skill position if they can get just some competence out of the quarterback and not a lot of turnovers. The defense, which has been a staple also with very strong defensive lines, it actually slipped a little bit last year. They went from number 2 in the nation in points allowed to number 38, but even that was pretty good, 23.1 points per game. They were 50th in the nation in yards allowed, 375. And they should be better this season. You got junior nose tackle Harrison Phillips. He's back from an injury. And they got another nose tackle in Solomon Thomas. He had 10.5 tackles for loss last year, and there were times when he just overwhelmed blockers. It's going to be a great defensive line once again for the Cardinal. Got a very strong linebacking core led by junior Kevin Palmer and senior Craig Jones. And then the secondary is strong. You got Zach Hoffpar. He's actually back after playing a year in pro baseball. He's a very athletic talent, obviously, and he hasn't been around since the 2013 season, but he played in the Pac-12 title game that year. This looks like the best defense in the Pac-12. The schedule going to be interesting early. They're going to open with Kansas State of the Big 12 and USC. Both those games at home. And week 3 is at UCLA. Week 4 at Washington. So big tests early on. This team is really talented all around. It's going to be difficult games to play. October 15th, they got that tough road game at Notre Dame. And then November 12th to be at Oregon. So there's quite a few challenging games on the schedule. But despite that, this team is a threat to win the Pac-12 North. And with that dominant defense and what had been a very potent run-first offense at times, not surprising that Stanford's on a 25-14 run under the total. I can see that continuing again. All right, Washington Huskies. They were a team that was supposed to be in rebuilding mode last year under Chris Peterson, but they really impressed, Jeff.
This would be Peterson's best team there since he's been at Washington. They could give Stanford a run for. They returned 9 on offense, 7 on defense. They were 7-6 last year, 8-5 against the spread, 8-5 to the under. They're on an 18-8 run to the under. The offense averaged 30.6 points last year. They were 50th in the country in passing, 75th in rushing. But the sophomore quarterback Jake Browning is back last year, 16 TDs, 10 interceptions, nearly 3,000 yards, and 63% completion rate. Also, quarterback KJ Carter-Samuels is there, and he saw some time. And in the spring game, Browning was 5 of 9 for 65 yards and a TD. 4 offensive line starters are back, and sophomore tailback Miles Gaskin's back, 5.7 yards per carry last year. Wide receiver, they're in good shape. Dante Pettis, John Ross, who had looked really good in the spring, is back from a knee injury after sitting out last year. And the 2 tight ends are back, senior Darrell Daniels and sophomore Drew Sample. Defense, they were 12th in the country last year. 5 starters were sophomores. They were ranked number 1 in the Pac-12 in scoring defense and yards per play, 4.9 yards per play. That was 23rd in the nation. And they were number 1 in the Pac-12 in red zone TD percentage and yielded the fewest plays of 10-plus yards. And the secondary is led by a couple of all Pac-12 players, Buda Baker and Sidney Jones. So everything looks pretty good here for Washington this year. I think they're going to be a sleeper team. They could... I'd say 9 or 10 wins is out of the question. They'll probably be 3-0 when they play the first road game at Arizona State. They got Stanford and USC at home, and road games at Oregon, Utah, and Cal. And they're on a 30-20 against the spread run. So I'd like for Washington to finish at least second in this division, John, and win maybe 10 games.
All right, they've been covering games for a while, 30-20 spread run, and under the total of 25-14-1 under. You expect them to make a bowl with all that talent? I would too.
This is Jim Feist in Las Vegas, and I want to thank you for watching all of my videos. We'd love if you'd subscribe to my sports betting channel. It's free, so why not subscribe? Just click on the subscribe button, and I'll give you 7 days of free plays. 7 days of free plays on me. You'll get a YouTube message sent to you with the code word, and an 800 number. You just call in with the code, and whatever you want, call in, and we'll give you free service each and every day for 7 straight days. And thanks again for watching and subscribing.
Team I'm going to talk about probably won't be in a bowl. Oregon State, off of a tough season. Gary Anderson begins his second year. They were winless in the Pac-12, 2-10 overall record, 3-9 against the spread. That's part of an incredible 6-18 spread run. They've been money burners. There is a little bit of hope, though, for this season. Last year, the offense was terrible, 19 points per game, and there was a lot of reasons for that. Young quarterback play, terrible luck with offensive line injuries, and there's actually some optimism for this year. First of all, at quarterback, Anderson brings in Darryl Garrettson. Now, he transferred from Utah State, which is where Gary Anderson came from, and he did very good there 2 years ago, 18 touchdowns and 10 picks. He sat out last season, but he's mobile, and he's smart, and he's got very good experience. And then the offensive line, which got devastated by injuries, actually looks pretty good. They've got the guys who were hurt coming back, plus you got Sean Harlow, a 3-year starter at left tackle. He returns. And Gavin Andrews is a guard who was here last year, but he was out last year because of a foot injury. He's back. In addition, you got a BYU transfer, Braden Kearsley, who transferred, and he's a starting center. He actually started 18 games at center for BYU. So got to be a better offensive line, and it certainly looks better based on all the returning talent and the new people they put in. The wide receiver core actually looks pretty good for the new quarterback here. Junior Jordan Villeman is a 6'4", who had 660 yards last year, 15.3 yards per carry. They got senior wide receiver Caleb Smith, and he missed all but 2 games last year because of injuries, and he's been productive in his career for the Beavers. And then the running game has Ryan Nall. He's a sophomore who only had 555 yards last year. However, he had 6.2 yards per carry, so the offense should be much better than we saw last year, especially if Darryl Garrettson can absorb this offense quickly, which he should, having worked with Gary Anderson at the other school at Utah State. The defense, though, while the offense looks much improved, the defense looks awful. They brought in a new defensive coordinator for this year, and Kevin Clune. He's going to add the 3-4 defense. Problem is, there's really not a lot of talent for the new coordinator to work with. They were atrocious last year, giving up 37 points per game. They have 482 yards per game. They're ranked 117th in the nation. And Rommel Maggio, he led the team in tackles and sacks and forced fumbles. Well, he transferred to the SEC and Ole Miss, their best player. And their run defense allowed 5.1 yards per carry. They were last in just about every category you can look at. Pass efficiency, defense, 68.5 completions per game opposing quarterbacks did, which is absolutely stunning. They were last in sacks. They couldn't force turnovers. The run defense in Pac-12 play, miserable. 225.5 yards rushing per game, 5.1 yards per carry. So they don't have a lot of talent. They couldn't stop the run. I can't see them stopping anybody again this year, although that offense does look significantly improved. The schedule, week 1 is at Minnesota, kind of a difficult road trek, and then you got home in week 3 versus Boise. Their road games are a mixed bag: Washington, Colorado, Stanford, UCLA, and at home, not so great here. They got Oregon, Arizona at home. They're on a 26-22 run under the total. I can see that continuing as their offense is going to be much improved, but they're not going to be able to stop anybody. And finally, when Oregon State is an underdog, which is going to happen a lot, they can't win or cover games. 1-14 straight up, 3-12 against the spread in the role of underdogs. So team really to look at over the total. All right, Washington State, Jeff, they seem headed in the right direction under pass-happy Mike Leach. How does 2016 look?
Yeah, it took a few years, but Mike Leach finally has the kind of team that he likes here. And he's got some talent for that he didn't have a couple years ago. 9-4 straight up, 10-3 against the spread. They've returned 8 on offense, 6 on defense. Last year they averaged 31.5 points per game, 49th in the country. They were first in passing and 128th in rushing. So that's pretty much a typical Mike Leach team there.
Nice balance.
Yes. Quarterback, junior 6'4" quarterback, Luke Falk. 38 TDs, 8 interceptions, 4,500 yards, 69% completion rate. In the spring game, he was 23 of 28 for 170 yards. So the spring games are different from the regular season games at Washington State there. You got the 3 offensive linemen are back. The Cougars returned their top 3 running backs, Gerard Wicks, 5.7 yards per carry, Jamar Morrow, and Keith Harrington. Also, Harrington was the top receiving threat last year, 312 yards and 43 catches. And this year they bring in promising freshman James Williams. So they also have senior wide receivers Gabe Marks and River Craycraft. So they're absolutely loaded on offense. And it's going to be another typical Mike Leach team, a high-scoring team. But the defense is actually improving the last couple of years. Last year they were 83rd in the country, which was improvement under defensive coordinator Alex Grinch. Last year they forced 24 turnovers, which was an improvement of just 8 the year before. linebacker Hercules Mataafa is back, and the defensive line, they have to try to improve that pass rush with, but they have Nick Begg, Kingston Fernandez, and Galu Tapa back. So things are looking pretty good here for Washington State, better than they have in many, many years. The schedule is at Boise in week 2. They host Oregon in week 4. They have road games at Stanford, Arizona State, Oregon State, and Colorado. Big revenge game against Washington in the season finale. I'll look for Washington State. They won 9 games last year. I'll go with at least 9 games this year.
All right, and speaking of having no balance on offense, I'm going to do the same with Cal. 3rd in the nation in passing, but 92nd in rushing. Sonny Dykes has done a terrific job with this program off a season where they went 8-5 straight up. Losing record in the Pac-12 despite all the hype with the #1 overall quarterback in Jared Goff going to the NFL. And they were 6-7 against the spread. So that's the thing with Cal. Can you just plug in a talent in Dykes' system? Or is it going to be, you require a guy who has above average talent to absorb the system and then throw every down like they like to do? Well, we're going to find out. Goff is off to the NFL, 43 touchdowns, 13 interceptions. So here's the battle between 6'2" sophomore quarterback Chase Forrest. He actually did play a little bit last year. That was in one game, though, against Grambling, 162 yards. And they have another sophomore quarterback in Ross Bowers. And Zach Klein, who returned to the program, is in the mix. But it's not just the quarterback spot. They have to work on their top 6 targets from last season have also departed. Now, it is a program where you can plug in wide receivers, so they should be fine with junior wide receiver Chad Hansen, 249 yards, 6'3" junior Raymond Hudson had some time. And then you got Vic Wharton III. He's eligible. He's a transfer from the University of Tennessee. Sat out last year, watched the system and learned it. And he was very good a couple of years ago in a bowl win over Iowa with a 49-yard touchdown reception. But overall, you got a new quarterback for the most part and a lot of new players. So it's going to take some time. They may have some offensive adjustments in September. They do have a running back in Kalfani Muhammad, who's versatile, 5'9" senior, had 189 yards receiving, 586 rushing, but he actually averaged 6.7 yards per carry as Dykes likes to spread the field, which opens up some holes in the defense and allows for draw plays, which we saw years ago at Texas Tech. So it's going to be a prolific offense again, probably not as potent, however. But here's the thing: as heralded as they were last year with the the #1 pick in the draft and a good season making a bowl, their defense was terrible. 30.3 points per game was 88th in the country. They gave up 455 yards per game. That ranked 110th, and they couldn't stop the run, giving up over 203 yards rushing per game. So this defense couldn't stop anybody. They do have a young defensive line. Sophomore James Looney returns. He's a defensive end. And Tony McCarry is a junior nose tackle. So there's a lot of talent returning on defense and experience, but they had a lot of trouble up and down the line. The secondary returns its 2 safeties, which is good, but the new cornerbacks are new. The secondary, you're going to open with Hawaii at San Diego State, and then they get home against Texas Longhorns in week 3, so they could start 2-1 or even 3-0 here. But after that, you got Oregon, Washington, UCLA, Stanford, all at home, which is a plus, and then the road games at Arizona State, USC, Oregon State, and Washington State. Kind of a difficult schedule here. If they had Goff and went 8-5, kind of see them taking a step back this year, maybe 6-7 or 7-6. And for totals players, keep this in mind. We think of them as passing every down, therefore you're going to score a lot of points and give up yards. Therefore, you look at Cal over the total. Not so fast. The odds makers make their totals extremely high. Last year, Cal was 8-5 under the total, and with some new quarterbacks working in, I think those totals are going to be too high again. So be careful about looking at Cal going over the total. Might be overvalued in that department, and I would lean toward under, particularly early in the season. All right, before we jump to the Pac-12 South, if you want to get free plays sent right to your cell phone every day, just text GAME, G-A-M-E, to 25827. You get free plays right from Jim Feist. If you want to get plays from Las Vegas Sports Services every day in every sport, Jeff has those available at jimfeist.com, along with other top handicappers in the nation, plus free stuff too, articles, more videos, and Jim's Fast Facts.